Celtic Flash Tales. 1 hour, 1 dozen ancient tales from Ireland, Brittany, Cornwall, Isle of Man, Scotland, Wales, human, fairy, animal, monsters. Ancient myths condensed down to delightful bite-sized morsels. I don't know why I have to do mahaha when I say bite-sized. Just part of my, I don't know. Anyway, lead us off with an introduction. Yeah, because I love introductions. A long time ago, in the lands of Ireland, Brittany, Cornwall, Isle of Man, Scotland, Wales, the stories which Shanachies and bards told and sang became richer with retelling. The bards, or poet-singers, lived with kings and queens, chieftains, and successful warriors. Yeah, the unsuccessful warriors didn't get their own bards. They entertained at royal feasts, or when visitors arrived, in halls brimming with steaks from the castle's herd and jugs of wine from the royal vines. The poets sang, just like this. No, I'm not going to sing for you, because then you'd all run away before the story started. But trust me, they sang, and they sang well. And in Ireland, they sang about the ℚ𝔼𝕃𝕃𝕃, the children of the goddess Dana. The ℚ𝔼𝕃𝕃𝕃 were the last generation of gods to govern Ireland. When the mortal Milesians invaded, the Danans escaped under the earth into the other world. No, not Kitely, different. Anyway. And they became the She, meaning peace, or the fairy folk. Many Celtic heroes were descendants of the ℚ𝔼𝕃𝕃𝕃, and the gods known to the ℚ𝔼𝕃𝕃𝕃 in Ireland were also common to other Celtic peoples. In Celtic mythology, druids are important beings, the priestly class of Celtic society. With their knowledge of science, philosophy, and the cosmos, they advised the rulers. Their Celtic name, Druid, or druid, means thorough knowledge. Druids were the ultimate earthly authority, kind of like Caledonia here in the Kelowna Glen. Animals, too, played significant roles in Celtic mythology. There are loyal hunting hounds, including 2 immortal hunting hounds who belong to Finn McCool. Cows feature largely, as in the Cattle Raid, a story about a long war over 2 bulls from the Irish epic the ℚ𝔼𝕃𝕃𝕃. Horses, pigs, birds, even cockroaches. Ew. I didn't have to be cockroaches. Ugh. Anyway, they're all also important animals who teach humans their lessons. Yes, but then there's the monsters. Kelpies and giants offer challenges and opportunities for heroes to rise above the tricks they try. Besides animals and monsters, the fairy kingdom and the dwellers of the other world both help and challenge. Even the weather. That was weather effects. Even the weather plays an important role in Celtic mythology. The bard's poems extolled hospitality. A visitor knocks, and the door opens to a warm hearth and a good meal. To the weary traveler, a cabin at the edge of the woods holds as ready a refuge as the loftiest castle. Honor and duty and the geis as a sworn promise under the pain of death also appear in many myths. Even enemies are tied to one another by these values. The reservoir of Celtic myths and legends is seemingly bottomless. Tonight's stories, we're getting back to tonight's stories, are from a book titled 101 10-Minute Celtic Myths and Legends. Now, we all know that the Celts, the Irish in particular, are known for anything but brevity in their speech or their tales. One may ask, is there no such thing as a direct conversation in Ireland? Well, never mind your desire to move on to a new place or a new subject. You need to shoot like an arrow to some important engagement. An old joke claims the Irish never answer a question except with another question. Never answer a question but with another question. Now, whoever would have told you that? It would not be funny were it not so true. Just as it is true that the Irish has no words for our simple yes or no. Indirection is an Irish way of life, eh? And so it is with Celtic myths and legends. Many of these epic tales took place over many years, and if I were to tell you the whole story, even just one of these stories, in one sitting, it would take me nearly 10 hours for a single story. However, tonight is a very special night, and each story will be condensed down to a mere 10 minutes or less. I just thought it'd be fun to do just so we can get a taste of some of these great tales. And I hope you find these stories to each be true to their own original full-length tale. Ba-ba-ba. 101 10-hour stories. I think we can do it. Pretty sure after about 6 hours I'll need a pee break, though. Anyway, our first one is ℚ𝔼𝕃𝕃, King of ℚ𝔼𝕃𝕃. Have the chieftains arrived? King ℚ𝔼𝕃 asked. The gatekeepers said yes. Well, bring them to the meeting hall, said the king. The king addressed the clan chiefs. Do you fault anything in my rule? Nay, they responded. Do you blame me as your lord for anything? Nay, the chief shouted. Am I the king of the 4 tribes of ℚ𝔼𝕃? Aye, said the chiefs. Each response was louder than one before. And of the islands of the sea? Aye, said the chiefs. Do the 4 tribes and the islands of the sea acknowledge my rule? This time silence answered him. One island defies ℚ𝔼𝕃 of ℚ𝔼𝕃, the king shouted. Do I have your loyalty to attack ℚ𝔼𝕃 of the Green Hills, where our brave warriors perished so our forefathers could rule? Aye, aye! The response was fierce. It was accompanied by a stamping of booted feet, blood-curdling shouts, and a banging of spears. They will repent the day they rose against me, the king said. He did not shout his white-hot words. The chiefs subdued their cheers of support over invading Erin. They looked over at ℚ𝔼𝕃, and they knew what he was thinking. The Celtic kingdom of Erin owed a tribute to the Nordic kingdom of ℚ𝔼𝕃. The Nordic king could not quell his anger over the unpaid debt any longer without a fight. The king issued a proclamation to be posted throughout the kingdom, and it read, Fighters, come to the aid of ℚ𝔼𝕃 of ℚ𝔼𝕃. Assemble on the full moon at ℃. Islanders, meet 2 moons later at Erin. The ℚ𝔼𝕃 fleet master prepared the white-sailed ships and curved hulls. An enormous army readied for battle. ℚ𝔼𝕃 dispatched 1 boat to rally the ships of the warriors in the cluster of the islands of the sea. Word of the gathering of a fleet came to the attention of ℂ𝔼𝕃𝕃 in Erin, the most famous fighter in Erin. He rushed to Tara to tell King ℚ𝔼𝕃𝕃𝕃 the news. Greetings, sire. I have news of an invasion from ℚ𝔼𝕃, ℂ𝔼𝕃 announced. Now, ℚ𝔼𝕃𝕃, grandson of Conn the Hundred Fighter, was High King of Erin. He was a wise and powerful ruler and was considered the Irish Solomon, if you will. So extraordinary was his mind that the Tuatha Dé Danann once invited him to their home in the other world. No, not Kitely. He had returned to Erin with the precious gifts they gave him. I do not question your information, ℂ𝔼𝕃. Many times you have demonstrated the value of your foreknowledge, answered King ℚ𝔼𝕃𝕃. Are the Fianna ready? I sent the summons, answered ℂ𝔼𝕃. Now, I suppose all of you know the Fianna of Erin were the king's standing army. They were a fierce band of superior warriors under the command of ℂ𝔼𝕃. The Fianna were as notorious in their time for their outstanding battles and adventures as the Knights of the Round Table were in theirs. ℂ𝔼𝕃, what a great name, you know? Makes you think of Fonzie. Only taller, longer hair and stuff. And a spear. And a kilt. Well, anyway, he's cool. Before going to Tara, Finn dispatched his own advance team. Fast couriers upon their mighty stallions combed Erin from border to border to alert the Fianna. The message was to meet on the eastern coast near the River Bone. ℂ𝔼𝕃 led the Fianna of Leinster northward to join the muster. When ℚ𝔼𝕃 fleet docked in Erin, the anger of ℂ𝔼𝕃 and the Fianna warriors matched King ℚ𝔼𝕃's ire. But the ℚ𝔼𝕃s, having gathered an army over a greater area, were larger in number than the Fianna. The invaders held the advantage for several hours over the defending warriors, yet the Fianna did not yield. Their shields were bloodied, dented, and sometimes pierced through, and they continued to fight for Erin. You will die, Fianna of Erin. I shall extinguish your power and steal all your mustard, shouted the King ℚ𝔼𝕃 of ℚ𝔼𝕃. Hey, shouted the ℚ𝔼𝕃 army. Take the mustard! The ℚ𝔼𝕃 battle also incited the Fianna warrior Oscar. He was ℂ𝔼𝕃's grandson and a mighty fighter. Now you know why we need the mustard, because we have Oscar. No ℚ𝔼𝕃 king was going to subjugate Erin and disband the Fianna as long as he breathed. Hadn't his father, Oisin, been the land's greatest poet? Hadn't his grandfather, Finn, eaten the salmon of knowledge? Oscar determined to fight to the death for Erin. He drew his sword and advanced upon King ℍ𝔼𝕃 himself. King ℍ𝔼𝕃 met the attack, and they fought hand to hand. The fight was furious, and both Oscar and the Lochland king pierced the other's armor many times. Their wounds were serious, yet they kept on fighting. When evening fell, they still fought. Under the moon, Oscar dealt the fatal blow to King ℍ𝔼𝕃, and he died on the battlefield. The horrified and wounded Lochland forces fled for their ships. "Send news, the High King Cornwall ℍ𝔼𝕃, that Erin is free!" Erin ℍ𝔼𝕃 shouted. The victorious Fianna roared. So there you go. In less than 10 minutes, a 10-hour tale. A great epic. On to the Garden of the ℍ𝔼𝕃. Let me take a drink here. The Garden of the ℍ𝔼𝕃. The fountain was crystal and sat upon a crystal pedestal. The bowl of the fountain was neither rounded nor flat on the side, but a combination. The top of the bowl curled under, just eye level with a mortal, and the bowl was filled to the fullest. The dazzling dimensions and facets of the crystal fountain were blinding to a mortal. 7 hazel trees were round it. A lock, which was not quite visible, seemed to hold the trees together with equal distances between. The hazel trees and the forest between them produced the fruit of knowledge inside which the hazelnuts grew. The nuts grew swollen and hard, even while the ripest berries still hung from the trees. The leaves on the branches with the nuts and the berries were ablaze in color. Yellows, oranges, reds so rich they were purple. They shimmered without a sound. They were as still as the air with no wind. It was very still here. Mortals, in fact, said it was dead. The spring of water in the fountain made a tall, delicate arch upon the surface of the bowl without drops spilling down the curl of the edge. Rising from the bowl, stretching to the top of the arch, sliding down to the surface, the water play was continual. The fountain was the charm which protected the fruit of knowledge. The sound of the old tongue broke through. In words we might understand, the last of the speaker's incantations was, "Open door between the worlds into the garden of the ℍ𝔼𝕃. I am Caithan the mage." He was visible in the world of mortals through white mist. He wielded a wand of elder. Flame embers were discerning from the tip. And as the mage finished drawing an arc in the air with it, he cast a knowing glance to the door at the crystal fountain. Then he threw his hands over his eyes and dropped the wand. "To stare is to go blind," he reminded himself. He walked into the opening he had drawn in his world through the door between the worlds. He stepped out into the garden of the ℍ𝔼𝕃. The blazing leaves and the hazels caught his attention. "It is dead here," said the mage. Music began to play, and he turned to investigate. He saw the crystal fountain, which he looked at with lids half closed. The music came from the water and from the delicate arch. It grew louder. It was difficult to tell apart the different instruments of the song. Caithan the mage had to cover water over his ears. It was no longer music. He could not tolerate the noise. He shrieked, and when it fell, and it roared when it rose. The noise thundered in the mage's ears. It was so boisterous it pained the muscles in his whole body. His elder wand in hand, Caithan the mage dragged himself to the fountain with a lowered glance. He said a simple spell to make himself upright because he was too weak to stand on his own. It took every bit of his power to lean against the side of the crystal bowl. The mage reached his fingertips over the curled edge into the icy water inside. He put his wet fingers into his mouth and he drank the water on them. "Ah, I can tolerate the music now, and my body no longer pains me," he rejoiced. He stood to his full height, and slowly he stopped squinting. He looked directly at the surface of the water in the crystal bowl. "Ha! I'm not blind," he said happily. The mage hoisted himself so he could look at his image in the water. Why have I come here?" he asked in confusion. He grew frightened when he could not remember who he was or how he was named. He backed away from the fountain and turned toward the hazel trees. "Ha! Now I remember. I am Caithan, the mage, in the garden of the ℍ𝔼𝕃. Yes." Caithan plucked a hazelnut from one of the branches. "The fruit of knowledge. It's mine." He held the nut in its casing and looked at it for a moment. He broke apart the shell and removed the fruit. ℍ𝔃𝔃 the mage bit into the fruit of knowledge he had come to find. Visions overpowered him. He saw the settling of Erin by the ℍ𝔃𝔃 and their splendor and their goodness. The wars of invasion against Erin bloodied his mind's eye. The hunting chases of ℍ𝔃𝔃 and the Fianna excited him. The swordplay of the warrior women ℍ𝔃𝔃 frightened him. The castle at Tara enchanted ℍ𝔃𝔃 the mage. An ancient face was the next thing he saw. The image was blurred. The face had a body which disappeared and came back. White mist surrounded it. The ancient face spoke to the mage in a voice as deep as the caves. "Ask," said the voice. "What is the meaning of life?" asked ℍ𝔃𝔃 the mage. "You have the wisdom of the ℍ𝔃𝔃, but not the answer to your question," boomed the ancient voice. "Well, what is the answer?" ℍ𝔃𝔃 asked. The ancient face shook the white mist with laughter for a full 42 seconds. "There is no meaning of life," it bellowed, and then a chill wind blew the mage away from the garden of the ℍ𝔃𝔃. Scurrying right along. Those crazy mice. ℍ𝔃𝔃 and the King ℍ𝔃𝕃. ℍ𝔃𝔃 the Proud. Yes, ℍ𝔃𝔃 the Proud, the son of the Dagda the Good, was the lord of the land of the immortals. He searched the land of immortals for his second wife ℍ𝔃𝔃, also an immortal, after his first wife banished her. ℍ𝔃𝔃 found ℍ𝔃𝔃 in the land of the mortals, at the court of King ℍ𝔃𝕃 of Ireland in Tara. She was Queen of Ireland, in fact, married to ℍ𝔃𝕃. ℍ𝔃𝔃 the Proud challenged the king to 3 games of fickle, or chess. After losing the first 2 games and yielding to the king the prizes he demanded for winning, ℍ𝔃𝔃 won the 3rd game. He agreed to return after 1 month to seek his prize, which was to kiss Queen ℍ𝔃𝔃, who no longer recognized him nor even remembered he was her former husband in the land of the immortals. In the month since he had lost the last game, King ℍ𝔃𝕃 assembled an army. He intended to fight ℍ𝔃𝔃, whom he did not trust for his wife, Queen ℍ𝔃𝔃. But before even a warrior could unsheathe a sword, ℍ𝔃𝔃 took ℍ𝔃𝔃 into his arms and kissed her. Then she remembered him, and they departed from Tara as swans. Now, this is the story of King ℍ𝔃𝕃's revenge against the world of the ℍ𝔃𝔃, the children of the goddess of Dana. The king called before him Dalan, the druid. Dalan made 3 wands of wood from the sacred yew tree. Upon the wands he wrote a series of lines that sloped from a baseline. They were called ogams. The druid recited the ogams for 1 year until the location of ℍ𝔃𝕃's palace at ℍ𝔃𝕃 was revealed to him. "Unearth the mound of ℍ𝔃𝕃 and rescue my ℍ𝔃𝔃," the king commanded his warriors, for he is desperate to get his beauty back. The words of the song ℍ𝔃𝕃 the Proud sang to ℍ𝔃𝔃 to woo her back to the great plain of the land of the immortals burned in King ℍ𝔃𝕃's ears. "O fair-haired woman, will you come with me to the marvelous land full of music, where the hair is primrose yellow? There none speaks of mine or thine. White are the teeth and black the brows, eyes flash with many-colored lights, and the hue of foxgloves is on every cheek. Pleasant to the eye are the plains of Erin, but they are a desert compared to the great plains. Smooth and sweet are the streams that flow through it. Mead and wine abound of every kind. Their men are fair, without blemish. Their women conceive without sin. O lady, if thou wilt come to my strong people, the purest of gold shall be on thy head. New milk and mead shalt thou drink with me there, O fair-haired woman." The warriors returned to Tara to report they found nothing beneath the mound of ℍ𝔃𝕃. "Unearth that every mound till you find her, every mound," ordered the King of Ireland. Now little did the warriors know, they indeed came upon ℍ𝔃𝕃 the Proud's palace at ℍ𝔃𝕃 on the first trip to fulfill ℍ𝔃𝕃's command. But the mighty palace disappeared when they approached, only to reappear when they departed. The king's forces excavated mound after mound all over Ireland. They believed they wreaked havoc upon the abodes of the ℍ𝔃𝔃. Every mound the warriors brought to ruin, the inhabitants of the other world rebuilt as soon as they rode away. They build them again even before we destroy the others, complained the king's forces upon realizing what was taking place. But the king was relentless in his need to recapture his queen. You have your orders, he declared each time the commander of the royal forces returned to Tara with his complaints. And so the warriors destroyed more mounds, and immediately the ℚ𝔴 restored them. With all the destruction and rebuilding, there was never a sign of Queen Etan nor of Medea the Proud. Medea, tired of the relentless pattern of destruction of King Jochid. I will send you in the company of 50 handmaidens, the mortal king of Ireland. If he does not recognize you, he will relinquish forever any claim to you, Medea told his beloved Etan. I do not want to go, not after we have finally found each other again, Etan protested. Do not worry, my love, he will not know you, Medea soothed her. Medea confronted Jochid with the proposition. The king was not pleased to entertain another of Medea's bargains, but he agreed. Like his warriors, he had begun to see that his endeavors to find Etan in the mounds were fruitless. Queen Etan and 50 handmaidens who looked identical to her appeared at Tara before King Jochid. Medea watched from the distance. Oh, mercy! How can I discern which is you, my Etan? The king cried. Etan was so moved by his expression of grief that she gave Jochid a sign. Ha! She is my Etan, he said. Medea released a sound of grief. He realized that Etan had chosen to remain in the world of mortals over returning to the land of immortals with him. Etan, the immortal, and King Jochid, the mortal, lived the rest of their years together. They resided in Tara happily as Queen and King of Ireland. Seems like Princess Amidala tried to ploy like that once. I wonder if she's Irish. So, next step is ℚ𝔴, or the land beneath the waves. Now, some ℚ𝔴, the children of the goddess Dana, disappeared underwater when the mortals claimed therein. Oh, they still retained estate management rights to the land, however, but they lived in their palace in the land beneath the waves, just off the border of the Sim. They called this off-Sim region ℚ𝔴. Their hands and feet were webbed, their skin color greenish, and their hair was onyx black, long and stringy. The great Linden Ocean lay over ℚ𝔴. The inhabitants were skilled in illusion, and by touching Alt-G would activate God mode and themselves from resing in the land of the dwellers and the noob's viewers. They decorated their underwater home with multi-prim gemstones and mesh artifacts from the land. Yet they were eager to surface and go on the parcels of the main sim when the opportunity arose. Every 7 years in Dingle Bay, maps.secondlife.com/dingle_bay, the soft sand which lay beneath the water dried. The terrain was retextured with grass until a green plain appeared. It was said that the ℚ𝔴 teleported to this plain from ℚ𝔴. Some people claimed to have seen them celebrate with live streaming music and elaborate dance AOs and scripted jugs of cider. One day an avatar named Shay said to himself, I must see if the bay clears from natural events, or whether the ℚ𝔴 use scripts and estate management tools to cause the sea to withdraw to the horizon. So Shay waited upon the sculpted saddle on the back of his breedable's mare as Dingle Bay derezzed and became the plain. Now what Shay could not see was the activity of the ℚ𝔴 as they prepared. Tap, 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 tap. Where are the drums and the bells? One of them texted underwater. Tap, 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 tap. In the wagon, someone texted back in group chat. Tap, tap, tap. The cider? Loaded upon the sows. Tap, tap, tap. Have we enough barley cakes and honey? Tap, 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 tap. More than last time, every gelding has cake and honey and cheese on his back. And so the texting went on. And a parade of flexi-prim green cloth and high-prim red shoes, brilliant particles of glitter and sparkles, everybody with an arc of at least 100,000, scripted wands and lanterns, work animals and wagons, gaily decorated horses and chariots rose from ℚ𝔴, and with much lag surfaced upon the grass-covered plain. They haven't rezzed yet on my viewer, Shay said to himself. He used his space mouse to maneuver his horse across the short distance to the edge of the newly rezzed plain. I think I might hear music. Bells, I think. And furiously, Shay turned up his volume. They must be using invisiprims, or full alpha, he said. Meanwhile, the Ⅎ𝔼𝕃𝕃𝕃 were overloading the ink and dance balls and dancing up a frenzy of pixely rainbows accompanied by an orchestra of drums and bells. Colorful, sparkling caps flew off their dark hairs that cascaded past their knees and fell loose, increasing the arc ever higher. I saw shadows, Shay said, though he knew he did not have his graphics set to ultra or the advanced lighting model activated. He was uncertain whether to stand up and dismount or not. Pass the jug over here, yelled one of the merrymakers in voice chat. Yep, I'll have a jug too, seconded someone else. Now Shay did not have voice enabled in his viewer, and he could not hear them. Jugs of frothy ale sloshed from one to the next of the Ⅎ𝔼𝕃𝕃. Honey oozed from barley cakes until more than one belch resounded from the speakers and spoke to how good it all tasted. The pace of the streaming music slowed as the musicians became more and more intoxicated, and as happy dancers dropped to the ground, went AFK, and began to snore. Maybe I didn't see anything at all, Shay said. I'll dismount and see for sure. Shay stood tall upon the grassy plain, oblivious of the sleeping Ⅎ𝔼𝕃𝕃 about him. What is that over there? He asked himself. When he neared the whitish-colored ℃ object, he saw that it was a mesh cloak which reached to the horizon. With his next step, he noticed the cloak began to vibrate and to move in a rolling motion on the textured grass. As he got closer, he thought he smelled the brine of the sea come from it. Could this be how they keep the water away? He asked. Not waiting to think about what he was about to do, Shay grabbed the sea cloak from which belonged to the sleeping Ⅎ𝔼𝕃𝕃. He threw it upon his back and, hitting Control R, ran for his mare. As he fled, his back pulsated underneath. He felt uncomfortable. He right-clicked and sat on his avatar, leaped for the mare to escape the enchanted parcel of the plain. The horse grunted. The Ⅎ𝔼𝕃𝕃 awoke to see Shay depart with their cloak. A loud hum as of audio feedback in his speakers followed him. It hurt his ears as it surrounded him from all directions. It made no difference which way he turned the mare. The hum grew until it became a loud grumble. It sounded like the rush of a giant wave from the sea. Shay cammed round to look. It's the retaliation. I must ride for the shore. I will surely drown, Shay determined. He kicked his mare to make her go faster. The Heather Goodlife Epic Wave version 5 gained on him. He was a half a horse's length, or 2.3171 meters, from the curtain of water. The shore was close. He mashed the page up key, commanding the mare to leap, and she did. He flew from her back upon the edge of the shore, and the horse collided with the wave and went off-world and was sent to his lost and found folder. Shay's body hurt from the impact. An avalanche of rocks, like a million boxes at a griefers' res party, crashed about him and deafened him. He clawed his way to safety upon the sand, though. I am safe, and I have my answer. Ha! I also have the cloak, he said proudly. Shay knew he had the cloak, because he still felt the sea tied upon his back. But when he searched his inventory, it was gone. And the Ⅎ𝔼𝕃𝕃𝕃 have had the last laugh, said Shay. ℏ𝔼𝕃𝕃, slightly adapted. Which brings us to halfway. The Swan Maiden's Handkerchief. The kingdom of Erin had 2 royal princes, sons of the High King, and they had different mothers. The mother of the elder prince died when he was young. The second prince's mother was the elder prince's stepmother. Did you get all that? Like most stepmothers from stories, she was jealous. The elder prince would inherit the kingdom. He was also better looking, more likable, and more intelligent than her son, because he was he must be banished, the queen proclaimed to her handmaid. The handmaid was used to the queen's carrying-ons about the elder prince and did not answer. The elder prince had just turned 16, old enough to drive, and he was good at hiding in the queen's wardrobe to overhear her conversations with the maid over tea, because he knew most of them involved, himself. At least she hadn't gone farther in her wishes to banish him than this. Talking about banishment was better than trying to actually drive him out of Erin. The prince did not want to worry the king with the matter until it was necessary, because the king of Erin had many important things to think about. The elder prince would wait until his stepmother decided to take action. And so, safe for another day, he eased himself out of the back of the wardrobe and down the stairs without detection. He decided to take a walk down to ℚ𝔼𝕃𝕃, his favorite place to think. 3 swans glided into the inlet noiselessly. A mist danced about them as they floated to the shore. Wondrously, the swans transformed into 3 beautiful maidens who began to bathe in the waters of the loch. The maidens swam towards the rock where the prince sat. "Heh, you're enchanted, aren't you?" the prince asked them. "Oh, yes. Our jealous stepmother, the Queen of the East, made us swans during the day. We are women in the evening when our stepsisters do not have suitors, when no one sees we are finer than they. I am the eldest daughter of the king," said one of the maidens. "But, you're women now. Well, they should look like women. Or are you an illusion?" the prince asked. "We can fight our stepmother's enchantment for 3 days only, but it requires much of our energy to do this. It takes a long while to store enough power, and woefully we spent yesterday finding you. Only 2 days, today and tomorrow, remain," the eldest princess responded. And so all afternoon, the prince and the princesses entertained each other with jokes about evil stepmothers and stories of their kingdoms. The prince said he had to leave for dinner with the king, and the eldest princess asked him to wait a moment. Will you come back with us and be a swan?" "Well, I'm touched by your invitation, of course, yet, yeah. I need another day to consider becoming a swan," the prince answered. Back at the castle, the queen demanded to see her cowherd. Announcing himself, the cowherd entered the queen's chambers with the maid. As he did each day before dinner, the cowherd reported on the doings of the elder prince at the loch. Today he told the queen about watching the prince talk in the distance with 3 maidens. "Yes, well, take this pin of slumber with you tomorrow. Pierce him with the pin and he will sleep," the queen ordered. The next day, where'd she get it from? Well, from a spinning wheel, of course. The next day, the prince sat on the familiar rock at the edge of the water. He was eager to see the swan maidens, and he craned his head toward the inlet. The cowherd readied the pin of slumber. Wish I could get one of those. Certain nights I could use a pin of slumber. Or a pint. Anyway, the cowherd readied the pin of slumber and aimed for the back of the prince. The pin flew at its mark and pierced him. When the 3 princesses arrived, they found the prince fast asleep. The elder sister carried a swan skin. Unable to wake the prince even after she gently doused his face with water, the eldest sister began to cry. "I'll leave him my handkerchief wet with tears," she said. She tucked it inside his shirt and swam away with her sisters. And so, for 7 years, the elder prince cared no more about his stepmother's threats. He traveled far and wide through many kingdoms to find the home of the daughters of the king of the East. And one day an old horse spoke to him. "Wilbur!" Wrong horse, sorry. One day an old horse spoke to him. "I'll take you to the kingdom of the East, if you are the king of Erin's son. I was sent for you, so get on my back. I'll say no more, no more," the horse said. The prince rode upon the old horse for 2 weeks. One morning the horse commanded, "I'm tired now. The rest of the trip is a 5-day walk for you. At the castle, go immediately to the room where a maiden lies ill. I'll say no more, no more." So the prince rushed to the eldest princess and he took her hand. Oh, but not quite yet, because before that he had a 5-day walk, didn't he? So, 5 days later, after walking, the prince approached the castle. It was evening, and he found the chambers of the maiden who was ill. The 2 maidens he had met at Loch Earn welcomed him. "How sick is he?" he asked. Her broken heart is bleeding," they answered, and glared at him accusingly. The prince rushed to the eldest princess and took her hand. "There we go." She asked weakly, "Do you have anything which belongs to me?" He reached for his tunic for her handkerchief, and he placed it gently over her heart. The princess sat up, and she was well. "I wish to be with you always," the prince said. The king of the East arranged a royal wedding for them, and the enchantment of the queen broke, and he died. And when the queen of Erin heard the news, she grew weak and soon died too. It's an Irish story. The prince and the princess, though, lived in the East for many years. They returned to Erin when the king grew old, and when the elder prince became the king of Erin, they remained happily in that kingdom for the rest of their days. Whew. Boy, you better hurry up. We got more stories to do. See if I can read a little faster here. The next one is the Island of Shadows. Now, the Island of Shadows was in Alba. Today it is called the Isle of Skye and belongs to the country of Scotland. The Island of Shadows was the home of Scathach, a great female warrior unbeaten in battle. She was tall with red hair and walked with a large sword hanging from her waist. Her school drew young warriors from many lands who wished to become champions. Scathach's second in command was ℚ𝔼𝕃𝕃𝕃, the bravest champion of the school. Now, it was not easy to approach the gate of Scathach's school. You had to have the gift of a great warrior, or you would surely die. One day, Scathach and ℚ𝔼𝕃 watched a young warrior with interest. They knew he had passed through the plain of ill luck, where would-be crossers sank into the hungry bog. To get there, he had also survived the perilous glen, where he had to fight his way through the hungry reptiles who lived there. But to reach the school's gate, he had still to cross over the Bridge of the Leaps. In the time before time, a god had built this bridge, a god who thought that a short game with death was an amusing way to brighten a day. The bridge's middle came up whenever someone stepped on the end, flinging the unfortunate crosser into the bottomless pit, from which his cries would echo for many hours. 1 in 1,000 made it across. Yes, that is the beginning of the oubliette. Well, he'll never do it. He'll never do it. I'll wager my best sword upon it, said the champion as he watched. Look, he has sense. He has sat down to rest before he tries. I'll wager my best shield he does it, Scathach answered. Both of them loved gambling. A grey mist announced the arrival of evening, and the young warrior stepped on the end of the Bridge of Leaps. The middle raised, he fell backwards to the dirt. He tried again, and once more he fell back from the bridge, luckily on land. Again, he had the same result when he stepped on the end. A fourth time, he leaped to the middle of the bridge, and before the enchanted bridge could throw him, he leaped to the far end. Well, I'll admit is this youth to training. Let's meet him, Scathach said. Angry about losing his sword, ℚ𝔼𝕃 accompanied her. My name is Setanta, said the youth. Ah, Setanta, did you not kill the hound of King Culann when it attacked you? Did you not remain with Culann until the hound's pup was strong enough to protect the fortress? I know your name. It is Cuchulainn, the hound of Culann, and you are 3 times welcome here, she said. ℚ𝔼𝕃 said nothing. They went to the feasting hall where Scathach's daughter, ℚ𝔼𝕃, was serving the students. She was offered a tray of meat to Cuchulainn, and their eyes met. When Cuchulainn accepted the tray from her, his fingers closed around one of hers in enthusiasm, and his tight grip broke her finger. ℚ𝔼𝕃 screamed in pain. Ouch, you great goose! It's my finger you broke! Cuchulainn fell to his knees. Lady, forgive me. I do not know my own strength. I will make amends. The sight of him on his knees struck her heart, for she had known many clumsy warriors, but few who were polite. She rapidly forgave him, and popped her finger into her mouth. In response to her scream, ℚ𝔼𝕃 and the physician ℚ𝔼𝕃 ran into the hall. The physician set ℚ𝔼𝕃's finger and rubbed poultices into it to stop the pain. His jealousy of the champion rose like poison when he understood what had happened. Twice he had proposed marriage to Scathach's daughter. Twice she had refused him. And now in less than a day she loved this young newcomer. He turned to Cuchulainn. You big ox, do you not know the difference between holding the hand of a fine woman and the milk of a fine cow? Nay, bellowed one of the students. Has he ever done aught but be with cows? Ha 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 ha! They all laughed, and Cuchulainn glared. She's forgiven me. What have you to do with it? Forgiven you? Aye, if she didn't, what would you lose next? Her arm? ℚ𝔼𝕃, stop it, said ℚ𝔼𝕃. He does not know his own strength. Aye, said ℚ𝔼𝕃, and why should he know that when he doesn't even know his own father? No one knows his father. One day he just appeared in the arms of his mother, but the whole world knows his mother. And who whelped you, ox? A god? In truth, Cuchulainn's father had been a god. His mother, Dictera, had loved the god ℚ𝔼𝕃, the finest warrior among the immortals, and she had given birth to Cuchulainn as the god's gift to her land, Ulster. Be silent, said Cuchulainn in a cold voice. Say what you wish of me, but speak of my mother and die. Both warriors reached for the javelins, positioned their small round shields in their left arms, stalked each other into the feasting hall. Slowly, ℚ𝔼𝕃 neared his opponent, who stood fixed and calm and watched him approach. Then swiftly ℚ𝔼𝕗 threw his shield to the ground, and at the same time he brought up his javelin. But more swift than a hornet's sting was ℚ𝔼𝕗, who threw his javelin so fast at ℚ𝔼𝕗 that it hypnotized him for a moment, and when he saw it, the javelin was already in him, and he fell dead on his side. The end. No, not quite. ℚ𝔼𝕗 looked coolly at ℚ𝔼𝕗. Surely you are to be the greatest warrior in Ulster, yet you have killed my champion. Darling, what am I supposed to do now? She said, putting her hand on her sword. What I did for ℚ𝔼𝕗 I will do for you, ℚ𝔼𝕗 answered. I will remain here for a year and a day, and I will be your champion. So ℚ𝔼𝕗 and ℂ𝔼𝕗 also grew better acquainted, and met every day after his training was finished. ℚ𝔼𝕗 became the champion of the school, for no other warrior could overpower him in a match of skills. The Island of Shadows. Deep breath, and moving right along. Boop, boop. The Fianna and the Dark Lord. Mergin was in deep sorrow, for Mergin could not find anyone to help her. Mergin was the princess of the Fomori, you see, those who lived under the sea. Day after day she fled through the rocks and cliffs and streams of her underwater world. She hid in caves and under ledges, and once even in a school of fish. She was escaping from her pursuer, ℃𝔼𝕃𝕋𝕀ℂ, the Dark Lord. Now Dubh was a wrathful man. Mergin's father, the king, was very old. In his dotage, he had promised Dark Lord... Dotage, isn't that a great word? Stop pausing, we gotta tell these stories. Sorry. Mergin's father, the king, was very old. In his dotage, he had promised the Dark Lord his kingdom and her hand in marriage. Even before they were married, he had moved into their palace. Mergin despised him. She would never, ever wed him, except in chains, perhaps. Rowing her boat under the red cataract, she looked up and saw a mighty band of warriors rowing home from a voyage. They were the Fianna, the greatest champions found in the 5 kingdoms of Scotland. Finn ℚ𝔼𝕗 was their chieftain. Whenever someone or some kingdom needed their help, Fingal led them there. Now the champions were on their way back from the Western Isles, where they had undertaken a quest for that king. Though the cataract was fierce rushing water, Mergin stilled it. When the Fianna passed through, the sea was as silent and as clear as crystal. Down on the seafloor they could see tall sea trees and waving branches of pink and yellow coral. There were great boulders with silver strands running through them. Suddenly they noticed a boat gliding up from the bottom. Mergin rowed it so deftly that not a wavelet disturbed the water's stillness and clarity. She came to a silent stomp next to the warrior's ship. They could see she was sad. Greetings, champions of the Fianna, she said. Tell us who you are, fair woman, and how you come to meet us, Fingal responded. I am Mergin, princess of the Fomori. Long have I looked for you. Indeed you are, Mergin, for Mergin means born of the sea. What do you wish of us? I am being chased by an enemy. We fear no enemies. Tell us who pursues you. I am promised to ℃𝔼𝕃𝕋, Dubh, the Dark Lord, in marriage, yet you alone can drive him from our kingdom. Everyone knows of ℃𝔼𝕃𝕃 and the horrors he has done, said Oscar, Finn McCool's handsome grandson. It would be horrible to be married to him, with or without mustard. I and all the Fianna will protect you, princess. Darkness seized the ship and the tiny boat. It seemed to cloak them. Up in the heavens, the Fianna saw a warrior riding a blue-gray stallion with a white tail and a mane. He was thundering across the sky. His onyx helmet, shield, and mighty sword flashed rays of deepest black through the sky. The rays obscured the sun itself. The seas tossed as though blown by a sudden tempest. The large ship of the Fianna and the tiny Fomorian boat rocked and blew to shore. As the warriors and his steed landed, gusts of wind rocked the Fianna. This must be the Dark Lord of whom you speak, observed Finn. He makes quite a show. Oh, yes. Oh, none other, said she in anguish. Please, help me against his great power. Oscar advanced into the shadow, ready to fight the warrior. High, his sword and shield were in place for battle. Move aside, Balak, said ℃𝔼𝕃𝕃. His voice made the ground rebel. Oscar was insulted. Boy, defend yourself, ℂ𝔼𝕃. Gil ℂ𝔼𝕃, gelded he-goat. Boy, you overreach yourself. The Dark Lord turned his attention to the princess. I come for you, not to fight with these boys. Oscar cast his spear at the warrior. The Dark Lord's shield split in two. The Dark Warrior shrugged and it dropped to the ground. Lucky shot, boy. Try that again. Oscar cast a second spear, which found the heart of the warrior's horse. Now ℃𝔼𝕃𝕃 was angry enough to fight. He pushed Oscar aside and stood before ℂ𝔼𝔃. I challenge 50 Fianna to fight me. I will battle each one and win, said the Dark Lord. Oscar was angry at being ignored, but to no avail. 49 Fianna, best of the clan, fought ℃𝔼𝕃𝕃. Ferocious were the sounds of combat. Mighty was the swordplay to be seen in that distant place on that day. Last to meet the Dark Lord was Gaul, the finest of the Fianna. Their fighting was fierce, and much blood fell in the sands beneath their feet. Dubh grew tired, for he had defeated 49 Fianna, you see. And for an instant, just an instant, he dipped the point of his sword slightly, and Gaul moved in on him with a powerful thrust. The Dark Lord fell on the blood-spattered shore. The tired ℂ𝔼𝔃 stood before him and spoke in verse. 50 Fianna fought to bring him low. Evil the Dark Lord, a champion in battle. Shadows no longer haunt the sea. Now the wind died too, and the waters were silent. Oh, I can return to my land without fear, said the princess. Before I do, promise me your help if ever I need it again, okay? Roaring agreement, the Fianna swore to do the princess's bidding. They boarded their ship, and she turned her tiny boat for home, and the Fianna cheered her safe passage and set sail. Boom. The Sea Maid. Next story, The Sea Maid. Murder-Shon, or Murder the Old, lived in Invery with his wife, who was also old. They had an old mare and an old female dog. The end. Part 2. Now, like his neighbors, Murder-Shon owed taxes to the clan Campbell, which he couldn't pay. The trouble was the fish had stopped biting, you see. The bailiff would come tomorrow to take his old house and the mare and the dog, too, just to punish him. But he let him keep his old wife, for she was surly. He went out in his boat to complain to the air and was heard by a sea maid. What will you give me if I fill your nets? She asked him. I don't have anything, Murder-Shon answered. I will take your firstborn son, she said. I don't have a son. Do you have a family at all, then? Asked the sea maid. And she listened as he spoke of his old wife, and said sweetly, Here are some grains, 3 grains for your wife to eat. In 3 months she will bear 3 sons. 3 grains are for your mare. In 3 months she'll bear 3 foals. 3 grains are for your dog. In 3 months she'll bear 3 pups. The last 3 are for you, but don't eat them. Plant them so 3 trees will grow in your garden. Whenever one of these trees withers and dies, you will know one of your sons has died. Now, cast your nets. You will from this day forward catch enough fish to prosper. But in return, you owe me your firstborn son, and I want him here in 3 years, she said. Murder-Shon did everything the sea maid told him. His nets were full, his wife, mare, and dogs gave birth, the 3 trees stood in his garden. 3 years passed. It was the day to give up his firstborn son. But Murder-Shon went out in his boat alone, just as he feared the sea maid showed herself. Where's your son? She demanded. Oh my, hush, have 3 years passed so quickly, pretended Murder-Shon. Don't try to fool me. You're lucky I'm raising the son of another fisherman who'll fill the promise. I will give you 7 more years, but only that, Murder-Shon, only that. Another 7 years passed, and Murder-Shon found it even harder to give up his oldest son. He went out to fish alone. Again he met the sea maid. Yeah, ma, I forgot this was the day, feigned the fisherman. Yes, well, I've taken the son of another fisherman. You may have 7 more years, said the angry sea maid. 7 more years passed. Murder-Shon's oldest son, Murdo-Og, or the young Murdo, was 17 now. Murdo-Shon told him about the sea maid. Well, I'll confront her myself, father, said Murdo-Og. You can't, son. She's more powerful, and she'll take you one way or the other. Murdo-Og thought about this and said, Well, then I must escape. I'll come back when she's gone. And so he left home on a black horse, the firstborn of the old mare. With him was a black dog, the firstborn pup of the old dog. He took his father's first sword, and with his blessing, and on the road Murdo-Og saw a freshly killed deer. No one was around to claim the kill, only a falcon, wild dog, and an otter. He took some of the deer meat for himself, his horse, and his dog. He fed the falcon, the wild dog, and the otter too, and they promised to help him if ever he needed them. And so he came next to the castle of the clan Campbells, where he found work as a cowherd. The grass in the pastures around the castle was brown, so Murdo-Og herded the cows at a greener pasture next door, and a giant named ℚ𝔃𝔃 shouted at him for trespassing, then rushed upon Murdo-Og with sword ready. ℚ𝔼𝔃 pierced his attacker's heart. He buried a ℃ and left a marker on his grave. When a ℃'s pastures too were brown, ℚ𝔼𝔃 took his cows into a new land, and another giant, ℂ𝔃, a ℃'s brother, attacked ℚ𝔼𝔃 for trespassing on his land. ℚ𝔼𝔃 killed and buried ℂ𝔃 and left a marker on his grave. And now a new problem arose for the Campbells. A three-headed monster demanded the chieftain's only child, the maiden Fionn. One head breathed fire and black, oily smoke. The next dripped acid, which burned and left green stains on everything it touched. And the third had razor-sharp scales, which could cut almost anything in the world. And it was 12 feet tall. Fionn was to present herself to the monster at the loch at dawn. A champion came to challenge the beast, but when he saw the three heads, he fled, for he was a coward. The sorrowful Campbells gave up and returned to the castle. None of them noticed the poor cowherd ℚ𝔼𝔃 who remained and spoke to Fionn. "I'm tired," he said, "but I'll fight for you. Wake me when you see the three heads by placing your gold ring on my finger." Fionn did as ℚ𝔼𝔃 requested. When he woke, he cut off one of the monster's heads and put it on a willow branch. Fionn vowed not to tell anyone he had fought for her. A second time, the monster returned for Fionn. A second champion stood up, but when he ran away, when he saw two ugly heads, for he was smart. Only ℚ𝔼𝔃 remained after everyone went sadly back to the castle. He asked Fionn to place one of her earrings in his ear to wake him. When she did, he cut off the monster's second head and propped it on another willow branch. And yet a third time, a sea monster claimed Fionn, and a third champion, and the spectators fled, but not ℚ𝔼𝔃. He asked Fionn for her other earring to wake him. When she did, he severed the last head of the monster and placed it alongside the others. The Campbell chieftain was jubilant. He arranged a great feast and offered his daughter's hand to the suitor who could remove the monster's heads from the willows. No one could. Fionn suggested that ℚ𝔼𝔃 tried. He easily removed the heads, for of course he had put them there. The chieftain recognized his daughter's jewelry upon the cowherd. Hey, you! I get it. You're the dude who saved my daughter, aren't you? Tell you what, man, you can marry her with my blessings, and you can be my son," he proclaimed. Now, sea maids never forget. If someone has broken a promise to them, they always try to get back at that person, even if it takes years. Hello, Kimstar. You may think a sea maid is like a mermaid, but that's not quite true. Like mermaids, sea maids are female creatures of the deep. But sea maids practice evil deeds when they meet humans. Mermaids often play tricks, of course, but they're never evil. So you should never confuse the two. It took 3 years for one particular sea maid to get back at ℚ𝔼𝔃. His father, ℚ𝔼𝔃, had promised to give his son to her when he was a child, but he never did. ℚ𝔼𝔃 had escaped. He'd overcome 2 giants and cut off the heads of the 3-headed monster, which is very hard to do. He was now happily married to Fionn, the daughter of the chief of Clan Campbell, as we have recounted. And one day they were walking by the loch, as they often did, and suddenly there was a crash. The waters of the loch stirred with great bubbles the size of horses. The 3-headed monster they thought was dead appeared on top of one of them with its 3 heads intact. Before ℚ𝔼𝔃 could raise his sword, the monster pulled him under water. "Oh, the gods pity me!" Fionn cried. The gods said an old man to her. "What you must do..." Pardon me. What was I saying? Oh, yes. "What you must do is give your most precious jewels to the monster," he advised. So Fionn ran to the castle, returned with her jewels, and up came the 3-headed creature with ℚ𝔼𝔃 in tow. "You can have all my jewels if you give him back," said Fionn. The monster accepted, and ℚ𝔼𝔃 came home. Another 3 years passed. ℚ𝔼𝔃 and Fionn still liked walking by the loch. This time the 3-headed monster jumped out and dragged Fionn into the water. "The gods pity me!" exclaimed ℚ𝔼𝔃. The old man appeared again. "You must destroy that monster forever. On the island in the center of the loch there lives a white-footed hind. I forgot what you're supposed to do with her, though. Let's see. White-footed island in the center of the loch. A white-footed hind. Oh, yes. You must catch her, and a black crow will escape her mouth. Yes, a black crow will fly right over her mouth, just like that. You catch the crow, and a trout will escape her beak. Out comes the trout. Catch the trout, and you'll find an egg in her mouth. The soul of the monster lives in that egg. Let's see now. Oh, yes, you must stomp on the egg. Stomp on the egg and you'll kill the monster. So Murdo swam to the island and found the white hind. If only I had a dog like the dog I saw when I ate the deer, he lamented. And the wild dog appeared and caught the hind. A black crow flew from the hind's mouth. But if only I had a falcon, lamented Murdo. The falcon came and caught the crow. A trout swam into the loch. If only I had an otter, lamented Murdo. The otter he had fed years before retrieved the trout. In the trout's mouth was the egg Murdo needed. He took the egg and he made an omelette upon it by stamping it until it smashed into tiny little pieces. And Murdo whipped up a classic Denver omelette with peppers and no onions. The ugly monster reared her head on the surface of the loch and roared. She grew weak and died, and Finchang walked slowly out of the water, and she and Murdo returned to the Castle Campbell, where they had many, many soups. And 3 years more passed. Finchang and Murdo were riding this time on the loch road. He saw a dark castle he'd never seen before. Is that the famous Howell's traveling castle? He asked. No, it's not Howell's traveling castle, and don't go there. It's forbidden, warned Finchang. Oh, that's only a superstition, Murdo answered. After all I have done, how could this hurt me? And he rode along alone into that dark, dark castle. An old woman met him at the gate. Come in, she invited, gesturing for him to go first. And when he walked past her, she took a club, raised it in the air, and hit Murdo right on the back of the head. His head was crushed like an egg, and the old woman cooked up a Florentine omelette with spinach and feta. At the home of Murdo Shan in Invery, one of the trees in the garden withered. The old man remembered what the sea maid had told him long ago. Remember the sea maid? It's a story about the sea maid. And since the tree died, he knew his first son was dead. To revenge his brother, the second son, ℚ𝔼𝕃, in case you're worried about this, the next two go much faster than the first one, and will be done shortly here. To revenge his brother, the second son, ℚ𝔼𝕃, left home in search of Murdo, the murderer. He arrived at Castle Campbell and spoke to Finchang. When he reached the dark castle, the crone met him at the gate, asked ℚ𝔼𝕃 to enter first. She beat him on the head with her club, bump, bump, and in Invery, a second tree withered in Murdo Shan's garden. Now, see, I told you it was fast. Angus, the third son, set out to discover what would become of his two brothers. He went to the dark castle. The crone also invited him to enter first. Well, no, that's not polite, is it? Angus said. Please, old crone, go before me. As she walked by, he noticed her club, and he drew his sword, and he cut off her head, and the crone spun around and caught the head before it hit the ground, though, and she put it back on her neck and swung her club. Angus kicked it from her hand and grabbed it before it touched the ground. He felt its magic, and he smashed it on the crone's head. This time she fell dead. There were no eggs. Bright grew the gloomy castle. The sun shone through its windows into rooms which had not seen sunlight in years. And in one of those rooms, Angus found his brother, who came to life when he touched him with the magic club. The old man appeared. Hey, ain't you the same guy who told me about the island? Asked Murdo. What I am. I had to serve the sea maid until she died. The sea maid? ℚ𝔼𝕃 asked. This castle was her seashore home, sonny. Here she raised the evil giants, ℚ𝔼𝕃 and ℚ𝔼𝕃. It was they she took instead of you, Murdo, when she gave your father extra years. As for the three-headed monster, she was the sea maid's favorite pet, you know. And so Murdo and Finchang reunited and stayed together, this time for a very, very, very long time. The old chieftain named Murdo, his successor, an unusual gesture toward a one-time cowherd. Murdo Shan and his wife joined their sons to live at Castle Campbell. They were prosperous for the rest of their days and ate lots of world-class soup at Castle Campbell. So, that's our lightning flash tales for the night. Thank you for joining us.